Mr. Jenkins, historically, roughly 90% of the food that goes into the country of Yemen has come in from the outside. It's imported into the country, and a significant amount of their fuel and medicine is as well. And 70 to 80% of those imports come in through the port of Hodeidah. With that in mind, what would be the implications, the humanitarian consequences of an attack on the port of Hodeidah by the Saudi-led coalition?
With the temporary closure of Hodeidah back in October and November, we saw that an extended closure of the port would be catastrophic to the humanitarian needs in the country.
Can you throw some numbers? I don't know if there's internal projections about over a certain period of time, the impact that would have on the number of people who would succumb to disease and hunger and so forth.
So I don't have numbers offhand. Yeah. I do know that the vast majority of people within that, or the majority of people in need in that 22 million number, live in the northern part of the country that are accessible best and easiest by Hodeidah Port. There is no way to take Hodeidah out of the equation and get anywhere near the amount of humanitarian and, more importantly, even commercial goods into the country.
I have a related question to both you, Mr. Jenkins, and Ambassador Satterfield, relating to the clearance process, which was discussed a bit earlier. But what more can I, as a member of the United States Senate, do to be helpful in ensuring that there's a more expeditious delivery of food, fuel, and medicine through the ports?
Senator, your efforts, the efforts of your colleagues in this body and on this committee, have been exceedingly helpful in allowing the administration to send a message from whole of government regarding the very specific concerns we have over any limitations, restrictions, constraints on the ability of both humanitarian and commercial goods, specifically to include fuel, to have unrestricted and expeditious entry into Yemen. And that messaging, which comes from us, the executive branch, also comes from this body, is extremely important.
Well, I want to thank you personally, Ambassador Satterfield. You did reference our previous conversations and work on this, and I'm glad you're on the beat. You bring great credit upon yourself and the Department of State and represent our country quite well in this difficult situation. I would like to summarize some of the things I elicited in my earlier round of questioning. Mr. Jenkins agreed we should expect all parties to the conflict to undertake measures to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. Ambassador Satterfield said we should expect all parties to undertake an urgent and good faith effort to conduct diplomatic negotiations to end the civil war there. And Ambassador Satterfield said we're right to continue to press the Saudi-led coalition to take demonstrable action to reduce the risk of harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure resulting from its military operations in Yemen. So for my colleagues, as they review the transcript of this hearing, I think it's important that they note that all three of those statements reflect the certification requirements in Senate Joint Resolution 58, which Senators Shaheen, Collins, and Coons helped me introduce last week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Young. Thank you, Ambassador Satterfield.